only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the webinar, The Art of Authoring, How to Create Perfect Documentation with XMetaL and Congree, presented by Just Systems Canada and Congree Language Technologies. We're coming to you today from Vancouver, Canada and Carlsbad, Germany. My name is Tom McGleary with XMetaL, and with me is Philip Bauer from our partner Congree. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you of the usual logistical details. First, we are recording this webinar, and we'll be sending out a link afterwards to everyone who registered. Second, all attendees will be on mute throughout the session, but note that there is a questions panel on the right-hand side of your screen where you can type any questions that you have for us during the presentation. We should have some time at the end of the presentation where we can go through and answer some questions. And finally, there's also a chat panel that you can use to communicate with us if you have non-question related comments, or if you have any problems, you can let us know there as well. And now I'd like to turn this over to Philip, who will start things off.
Thank you, Tom. So I will get started right away. What we will do first is to have a quick look at our company and what we do before we see a live presentation of the product. So I will start off with who we are and what Congree actually is, what do we provide, and we'll then go on explaining why Congree is something which can really help your company to increase quality of the text you are creating. And finally, we will see Congree in action within the XMetaL Author. Let's get started with our company. We have been in business for over 30 years now. This all started off with some industry customers in Germany like Volkswagen, BMW and Daimler, customers we still work with. Of course, we have not been called Congree since the beginning. We started calling ourselves Congree in 2010. This is also the point where we decided to completely redesign and refocus our product and focus more on usability, since we already had the engine and possibilities to analyze German and English texts and try to modernize everything with the most recent technology. We are mostly a software provider, but also provide services in the region of author assistance. Our software is, of course, the Congree authoring server, which we are going to present today. And regarding services, we offer services in the field of terminology work, so to build up terminology database or to manage your terminology database, translation memories, creation of style guides, and other services and consulting related to author assistance. Our main focus is actually the author. So of course you get all the statistics and all the engines and power you need to increase document quality, but what we try to do with the Congree authoring server is to provide the author something that is enjoyable and is fun and easy to use, so that you don't only have this possibility in theory, but actually really in action and not only in your shelf. We are currently serving about 90 customers. That's of course not as much as McDonald's maybe served so far, but I can assure you that you will save a lot more money by using us than by eating burgers. So for those of you who are interested a little bit in geography, this is where we are located. So you see this orange dot in the middle of Europe. Yeah, this is where our headquarters is situated. So if you should ever travel to Germany, feel free to drop by. The Congree authoring server is a tool which is integrated into XMetaL and allows you to check for spelling and for grammar, so to avoid any annoying or embarrassing typos you might have otherwise in your documentation. It also allows you to check for style according to your company standards. So if you have some style guide available and you want to ensure that all documentation created in your company follows the style guide, this is something the Congree authoring server can provide. Also, it checks for terminology according to the term database. So if you have a term database in-house and you manage and collect terminology and would like to enforce that this terminology is also used and considered, the Congree authoring server is for you. The same goes for abbreviations. So if you have custom abbreviations, or if you want to ensure that only abbreviations are used which are easy to understand for the customer, this is also something the Congree authoring server checks. We also have a lookup for similar sentences while you write. So whenever text is created, our sentence database is looked up and shows all the sentences that are similar to the content you are just creating. Furthermore, we also look up terminology information, which goes beyond telling the user if something is wrong or correct. You get additional information like context or definitions or whatever is available in your terminology database. And finally, we also allow to store new content which is created by authors to be used by everyone in your company right away as soon as the sentences have been shared and provided. All this happens completely automatically. So whenever you write, text is checked. It happens in real time. So you don't have to click a button and wait for some results. So it really happens while you write, which is especially helpful when you create new text and would like to reuse the material. It's directly integrated into XMetaL, so it seamlessly integrates into XMetaL and seems like a part of this editor. And it's something which can be used company-wide. So it's not exclusively limited to XMetaL or to a certain department. So it is something which helps you to ensure that the same spelling, grammar, and style rules and the same terminology can be used in your entire company. So in short, we help to ensure that you can use correct terms, the same style guide, and to reuse as much content as possible. I would like to focus now on 3 of the main topics we provide. First of all, it's the technical terms. So why do we even collect technical terms, or why would we want to check documentation regarding technical terms? If you have a look at this example here, I have display settings as a title. Access the screen configuration by pressing menu on the monitor frame. The settings appear in the center of the display. So here you can see that we have several locations where we describe our entity, so the product we are interested in, the product we are selling. And one time we call it a display, the next time we call it the screen, and we call it the monitor, and we call it the display again. Obviously this is or can be a problem for the user. So if I read technical documentation, or if I read a description or marketing text about a product, and the product is not always named in the same way, this might be confusing for me because I don't really know if the one who is describing this text is actually always talking about the same thing. So it could perfectly be something different, and it will be hard for me to understand what I should do. And this can be a problem when I use the product, or it can also be a problem when I would like to expand my market and the word is that your product is difficult to use. The same happens with settings. So we have settings here, we have configuration, we have the menu, and we have the settings again. So it's really hard to know if with settings and configuration we actually mean the same. Do we talk about something you see on the screen? Is it something else? And on the frame it's actually called the menu. So it's something we really should avoid to make use of our product as easy as possible. Yeah, the same or something very similar goes on with the style guide. So the style guide tries to ensure that text is always written in a certain way, that it easily matches what you would actually like to achieve with your text. So regarding the target audience and the goal of your text. So if you see this sentence here, we have a warning: you should wear an environmental suit before entering the lab. If I read a sentence like this, I could probably understand it like that. So failure to comply could make my boss angry or result in a nasty rash. So maybe I don't mind the occasional rash and do this anyways. So this is of course something we would like to avoid. So if you look at this sentence here, you must wear an environmental suit before entering the lab. This is something which is much more clear and gives me a better idea what I actually have to do. So here, failure to comply will lead to serious injury, maybe death, or the end of the human race. So if you're talking about something like a virus lab or something else. So this is a very complex topic to track. So if you have a style guide, you might know that they can contain a lot of pages. So if you look at the Chicago Manual of Style, it has about 1,000 pages, and also different rules might apply in different contexts. So if you have a warning in XMetaL, you might want to have different rules that you would have in a title or in descriptive text. So it always matters where you're currently writing. And this is something which is very hard to track and very hard to do manually. And the third focus I would like to introduce is the sentence reuse. So if you have a sentence like this one, open the hatch, there are literally dozens of ways how you can express this idea. So how you can say the same but with different words. So it can happen that you write something like that, open the hatch now, which is, if you think about it, basically the same idea. Because if you read a manual, if you read an instruction, and you read open the hatch, it's already assumed that you should do it now. So this additional word is maybe too much, but it does add an additional variant in your documentation. So just imagine one of your authors writes open the hatch and the other one writes open the hatch now. You already have two variants which you have to give to translation. You have to translate it into all the languages. And of course, you have to consider them separately when doing proofreading. And there are a lot more variants which can occur. So you can now open the hatch. Now you can open the hatch. Please open the hatch. The hatch can now be opened, and the hatch must be opened. So there are a lot of variants which can occur. They might be different in some cases, but in many cases they simply aren't. And this is something which you should try to avoid. First of all, not to confuse the customer and always give him the same idea with the same words. And second of all, to reduce translation costs, and third, to improve the entire release process and make proofreading easier by always using the same content. So maybe you have already been aware of those ideas and already have a terminology database. Maybe you have a style guide and maybe you already have a sentence database, but the question which remains is, even if you have a good terminology database, so how can you ensure technical terms are used correctly? This is something which is actually very difficult. So if you have thousands of terms in your database and the author is writing new documentation, how does he know that he has some term violation in his documentation? How can he check? So he has to check manually, maybe in a browser, and basically has to enter every noun he writes and check if this noun is actually allowed or if it's not allowed. And this is something which takes up a lot of time. Same goes for the style guide. So even if you have a style guide, how can you ensure that all authors follow it efficiently? I mean, if you have a style guide, what do you ask of your authors? So should everyone learn it by heart? Should everyone check it all the time while content is created? Now, this is something which is very difficult. It's even difficult for the proofreader, especially if the style guide even changes and adapts to new situations. So this is something where without mechanical help, you will have a problem. And even if you have a pool of sentences, of course, the question is, how can you make it available in XMetaL? So how can you make those sentences available in an editor like XMetaL? And you might have already guessed it, the answer is in the title. So you can do all that with the Congree authoring server. And what I would like to do next is to show you how this actually works. So how to create perfect documentation with XMetaL and Congree. And for this, we switch to our authoring environment. First of all, I will just start my editor like I always do. And as soon as the editor starts, you will see that it starts together with Congree already and Congree ready to use. So my virtual machine will wake up at any moment, I hope. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not reaching our, our license server, but I can fix this quickly. Okay, so now XMetaL is starting. And you can now see that Congree is also starting. This is something which can be configured. So you can configure it in a way that Congree is always ready when you open documentation in XMetaL. But you can also configure it in a way that you only access it on demand when you really need it. Okay. So, and what we see here is the standard XMetaL. I've already opened some documentation, and on the left side you see the Congree language check panel. This is the panel where we collect all violations or all possible violations against your style guide or against your terminology. Let's maybe focus first on terminology. And this is something which really works on the fly. So whenever I click into my document, Congree reacts to it and shows everything that is found in this paragraph regarding style guide violations or terminology violations. And as you can see in this first paragraph, we already have 2 violations which are displayed. And as soon as I click into another paragraph, I see further violations which might occur in this additional paragraph. So this works whenever you click into text, whenever you write text, it works in real time. Or you can, of course, check your entire document, which means that the entire document runs through your engine and shows all style and terminology violations in your electronic style guide. So as you can see, this is done now. We see here that we found 23 notifications in 36 sentences, so 36 sentences have been checked in total. I see a quality measurement up here, which you can completely configure by yourself. So you decide yourself what rules are critical and what rules are less critical to define when the document has reached a quality which is acceptable for you. And right now I set the focus on terminology and see all the terminology notifications for this document in my panel. And when I click one of them, they are selected within XMetaL, and I can see, for example, that I should review this term. So I also get some additional information. If I'm new to Congree, this is very helpful. So I get the text replace with the corresponding preferred term. The status of this term in the term database is deprecated. So I know I should not use content grasp SX. It's simply not sufficient. In this case, I also have to add the company name, which is Compathy. And via this proposal, which you can click, I can simply improve my text here and follow this term rule. So I can do the same with the next one. Here, once again, I should review this term. This time it's not forbidden. Here it's an allowed term, but there is a preferred variant. And once again, I can decide if I would like to use that or if I'm fine with what I already have in my document. This is especially interesting in cases where the terminology is not completely clear. So here we have a case where, depending on the content, you can either use improvement or upgrade. And for this task, we have an additional panel which we can activate. I will just dock this here. And we see that for improvement and upgrade, it depends on the context what you can actually use. So we have a certain text in which improvement appears, and I can look up in my terminology database what definition is provided for improvement. So I see that improvement is the process of reaching a state considered superior to the previous state. And when I have a look at upgrade, I see that replacement of a product with a more advanced version of the same product. So reading this definition, I can decide in this case that improvement is fine and that I don't have to change anything. And I can simply ignore this notification and move to the next one. Now let's have a closer look at the style guide, which is available additionally to the terminology checks. And you can see that all style violations, all violations to our style guide are also listed in this panel. So here, for example, in my style guide, for some reason, I have a rule which states that it should be avoided to use future tense. So avoid future tense, use the present tense if appropriate. The future tense is not appropriate in technical documentation. As you can see, this is a technical document. And now I can react to this notification or once again ignore it and can go through this to-do list from error to error and try to fix every situation and improve my document overall so that it closely follows my style guide and that it closely follows the terminology I have inside. Okay, what I would like to look at next is similar sentences. So as I told you before, Congree also listens to what you write and proposes similar sentences from a sentence database, which is in the back end of in the back end of Congree. This works very similar to the panel we just saw. So while I write and while I create text, I see similar sentences which exist in my sentence database. This I can probably show here. For that task, I will enable the tag view. So you can see that this is a data formatted document. And here I can just add an additional P in XMetaL and write Compathy headset. So, and with those two words, I already suggested to the system that there's something I would like to describe with the company name and with the product. And then I already get similar sentences from a sentence database from which I can select any and move them into my documentation. So it's really very useful because it's some sort of autocomplete. It works similar to Google, so it's like a search engine where you can search for certain words and see what content already exists and what content you have created in the past with the same idea, which expresses the same idea. This is especially nice if you're doing a lot of translations as well, because we display here at the end some information for what languages there are already translations available for those sentences. So if you have different sentences which express the same idea, it might be useful to choose those sentences which have the most translations, which will make the follow-up translation more cost efficient. Now here's something special which works especially fine with XMetaL, which is how sentences can be used in a certain context and how they are better suited for a certain context. So if I go into this title and write again Compathy, and I get my similar sentences, and I propose, for example, this one and add it to my document, here we see that the sentence can be applied, but I do not get a 100% match to a sentence I have in a database. And the reason is that I used the sentence in the wrong structure, in the wrong context. So I entered an actual paragraph into a title. And in this case, I'm warned that in this structure, in this element, this sentence has not yet been released, and it totally makes sense because the sentence is a complete sentence. It's not really a title, so it's some very useful addition to the sentence reuse mechanism that you always know if you can use a certain sentence in a certain context. By the way, this also works for the language check, because the language check also realizes that this is a title and that in a title you should not place a full stop at the end. So delete the period if appropriate, and you instantly know that here something is wrong. This is especially helpful if you have warnings, notifications, hints, descriptive text, instructive text, where you want to apply different rules and want to apply different content. So this can be done very easily. The authoring memory is accompanied by a matching rates report, which is a small, neat report which simply shows you in what range your sentences are currently located. So I see that 31 of my sentences already are in the 100% range, but I have a few sentences which are very close to 100% but do not quite make it, and I can focus on those sentences and see if I can still improve those sentences which are very close to a 100% match. So if I have a look at this one, which is a completely new sentence, and the only difference is that it has those double points at the end, and here, by simply clicking this proposal, I can create another 100% match because it's really unnecessary to have less than 100%, and in this case, because it's only about punctuation. Okay, as I briefly told you before, all that helps you to create text which is reused as much as possible. To be able to reuse text and to build up a sentence database, we have an additional feature, which is the authoring memory candidates feature. In the authoring memory candidates, you can see that all sentences are collected which did not reach 100%. So let's maybe deactivate all our filters. So that we see some more. Okay, so here you see all the sentences which did not reach 100% and are therefore new, meaning that they do not yet exist in the sentence database. So let's imagine that I just finished my document. I fixed all the problems. There are no more language check issues, and I would like to share those sentences with my colleagues. So all I have to do is to select them here and send them, which means that those sentences are now sent forward to the sentence database and are now in theory available to everyone. I say in theory because there are different mechanisms, the different workflows, and I decided to show you a workflow where you have to finally verify as an administrator that you really want to make those sentences available for everyone. So I will briefly show you how that works. For that we will have to leave XMetaL for a moment and have a closer look at our sentence collection database. Here we see those 17 sentences which have been proposed by me right now. So I can see when this happened, who it was. So it's me, the sales user, and I can see what sentences. And what I can do next is I can grab those sentences to work on them and have a closer look. So for example, I can have a look at this sentence. Here we have a sentence which was proposed by the author, and I see that there's a very similar sentence already available in a sentence database. So here I can decide, do I really want to have this additional variant, or is it actually not necessary? And if I decide to use this variant, I can even decide to eliminate the old variant which existed before by simply clicking here and then approving the sentence. And of course, it also works the other way around. So if you do not agree with any sentences proposed here, what you can do is select the sentence, give possibly a discard reason why you do not agree with the sentence, for example, because it violates some style rule, and then simply discard the sentence, which means it's not allowed to use the sentence anymore. And this has the following effect on XMetaL. So if I recheck my document now, we can see in this panel that there is a sentence in my document. I can click it and see where it's located, which I'm not allowed to use. So I know I should not use the sentence because it violates some style guide rule. Let's see if this is even true. If we enable the language check again, and see, yeah, there's one style issue, which is avoid future tense. So what I can do in this case is to look if I already have other sentence variants which I could use, or simply reshape my sentence and make it a little bit different. So as you can see, those two components, the style guide and the authoring memory, can be combined. So you use the style guide to ensure that your document follows a certain quality standard, the exact quality standard your company demands. So you have a style guide in-house. Congree is capable of making the style guide electronic, to convert it into electronic form, and to check for violations and show the user violations on the fly, so that you have a high probability that all your authors will follow the style guide completely. Additionally, for existing text, they can actually reuse material. You always have the possibility to use the authoring memory and insert text into your document which already exists, which already has been verified and doesn't contain any mistakes in the an ideal world, and just apply them into your documentation. Okay, I showed you those two features. I also showed you the possibility to propose sentences. The same exists also for term candidates. So there's another panel which you can additionally use, which collects and shows term candidates which you might not yet have in a terminology database, but which might be useful. So everything is collected here, and you can decide what to do with those variants. So for example, here I have the brainwave, that shows me the context in which the brainwave has been found, and I can simply decide to send this term candidate to the terminology database for evaluation. Of course, it's not yet released, but it will be available. And you can do the same. Let's see if you have something else with the product scope or with the remote control. Here we even have two appearances in the document where you can choose from, and propose this candidate as well. Also, you can just select any kind of text and propose this kind of text which you just selected as an additional term candidate. So if you have the feeling that what Congree collected is not complete or not completely useful, you can select your own term candidates and add those term candidates to the list, or you can even just come up with your own terms with your own context and propose those term candidates not related at all with this document. Okay, so this is my roundabout view, which I wanted to provide to you. So, and this is something, as I mentioned, is especially helpful in editors like XMetaL, which provide a complete XML structure, which you can use to adapt how you have to write depending on the context in which you're currently writing, and what sentences you can apply depending on the context in which you're currently writing. Okay, so this already concludes my little tour. For further information, feel free to contact me. So if you have had any questions, we will of course answer them afterwards. Also, you can see a more extensive view of XMetaL by going to our YouTube channel, where you will see additional videos and additional features of Congree if you're interested. I hope this was a little bit helpful for you. I hope you found something which could be useful for you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you again in the future. Thank you very much. Yeah, so maybe let's come to the questions now, if there are any.
Thanks, Philip. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type those into the box now. We have actually, Philip, we don't have any questions yet. Well, we did have one question during, which was, I'll just answer that, which was someone asked if this was being recorded, and yes, it is being recorded, so this webinar will be available afterwards. Not looking like we're going to have any questions, Philip, so I think we may be finished. Okay, well, as Philip said, we'll certainly be available for follow-up questions. You can email us anytime, and with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today, and you can look for the recording of the webinar in your email hopefully soon, and you can also monitor the webinars page on the XMetaL website, where we'll have this recording available as soon as we can. Thanks very much for attending today, and that concludes our webinar.
Thank you from my side. Goodbye.